Welcome back to ClearKai. In this lesson, we are starting a brand new series all about percentages. You see percentages everywhere, on test scores, shopping discounts, even in taxes and statistics. So understanding them deeply will help you both in math problems and in everyday life. Over the next few lessons, we will take this one step at a time. First, understanding what percent means. Then, learning how to use it in real-world problems. And finally, mastering multiple step and SSAT-style percent questions. When we talk about percent, we're really saying out of 100. For example, if I say 10%, I mean 10 out of every 100 parts. Or if we imagine 10 people here, one person out of 10 is highlighted in blue. Next, 20% means 2 out of every 10. 50 means half, 5 out of 10. And 100 means everyone, the whole group. So whenever you see a percent, think of it as a way of describing how many parts you have out of 100. That's the heart of all percent problems, whether it's grades, discounts, or taxes. Once you see it as out of 100, everything starts to make sense. So where does the word percent actually comes from? It comes from the Latin phrase per centum, which means by 100. That's why percent always connects to the number 100. In math terms, percent is just a way to show part of a whole, but written as out of 100. That's why we use this formula. Percent equals part divided by whole times 100. If we take, for example, 3 out of 100, that's 3%. If it's 50 out of 100, that's 50%. So whenever you see a percent, just think, it's the part compared to the whole, out of 100. Let's look at a simple example to see how percents work in action. Here's the question. What is 56% of 250? When you see percent of in a problem, it always means you will be multiplying the decimal form of the percent by the number. So we start with 56% of 250, which means 0.56 times 250, and that gives us 140. So 56% of 250 is 140. Here's the key takeaway. Whenever you see percent of, you multiply, and always change the percent to a decimal before you do it. In the last example, we find a part of a whole by multiplying. Now let's flip it. What if we already know the part and the percent, but need to find out the whole? Here's the question. If 11% of a number is 154, what's the original number? We can start by writing it as 154 divided by 11%. When you are finding the whole, off becomes divide instead of multiply. Next, we turn 11% into a decimal. That's 0.11. So it's divide 154 divide 0.11 equals 1400. So the total number is 1400. The key idea is when you are finding the part, multiply. When you're finding the whole, divide. Now that we know what percent means, let's connect it to fractions. Remember, a percent is just a fraction out of 100. So turn a fraction into a percent, we simply multiply by 100. Here's the formula. Percent equals fraction times 100. Let's look at an example. 1/2 times 100 equals 50. So 1/2 is 50%. 1/4 times 100 equals 25. So 1/4 is 25%. So whenever you want to change a fraction into a percent, just multiply by 100. That's it. Let's practice turning a fraction into a percent using a real example. The question says, what percent of 20 is 15? To find a percent, we always do part divided by whole. Here, 15 is the part and 20 is the whole. So we calculate 15 divided by 20 equals 0.75. Now, turn that decimal into a percent, multiplying by 100, and we get 75%. So 15 is 75% of 20. Here's the rule to remember. Whenever you are finding a percent, divide the part by the whole, then multiply by 100 to get your percent. Now let's look at a fraction that's bigger than 1. 1 and 1/5. We can think of this as 1 plus 1/5. The 1 represents 100%, and the fraction 1/5 is 20%. Then we add them together. 100% plus 20% is 120%. So 1 and 1/5 equals 120%. Here's the big idea. Whenever a number is greater than 1, it means more than 100%. In this case, we have all of something plus a little extra. Here's a quick concept check. Which of the following operations is the same as taking 25% of a number? Let's remember what 25% means. It's 25 out of 100, or 1/4. So taking 25% of a number is the same as taking 1/4 of it. That's divide a number by 4. That means the correct answer is A. We can think of it this way. Whenever you see 25%, just picture 1/4 of the whole. That's a super useful shortcut to save time at tests. Let's finish with one more example using bigger numbers. The question is, what percent of 24,000 is 3,300? We will use our main formula. Percent equals parts divided by whole times 100. So 3,300 divided by 24,000 equals 0.1375. Now multiply by 100 to turn that into percent, and we get 13.75%. That means 3,300 is 13.75% of 24,000. And here's the pattern you will always remember. To find a percent, divide the part by the whole, then multiply by 100. It's that simple, no matter how big the numbers get. Let's try one more fraction to percent example. We want to convert 7/15 to a percent. The first step is divide. 7 divided by 15 equals 0.466, repeating. Now we multiply that decimal by 100 to turn it into a percent. That gives us 46.67%. So 7 over 15 is about 46.67%. Here is the key idea to remember. To change any fraction to a percent, divide it first to get a decimal, then multiply by 100. Simple and always works. Here's our next example, and it's a good one to test your understanding. We are converting 11.8 over 8 to a percentage. Start the same way. Divide first. 11.8 divided by 8 equals 1.475. Now multiply by 100 to change that to a percent, and we get 147.5%. This shows that sometimes a percent can be greater than 100%. It just means the part is bigger than the whole. In this case, 11.8 is more than 8. So whenever your result is more than 1, your percent will be over 100%, and that's perfectly okay. Here's one last example. We are converting 5/6 to a percentage. We start by dividing 5 by 6. That gives 0.833 repeating. Next, multiply that decimal by 100 and we get 83.33%. So 5/6 equals 83.33%. And that's the pattern you should remember for any problem like this. Percent means out of 100. So just divide to get a decimal, then multiply by 100 to find your percent. Let's wrap up what we've learned about percentages. First, percent simply means per 100. Everything we do with percent connects back to that idea. Second, when you are finding a percent of a number, multiply. Third, if you are finding the whole when a percent is given, divide by the percent. Fourth, to change a fraction to a percent, divide it first, then multiply by 100. And finally, percent is just a way to compare parts out of 100. If you understand that percent means, you can solve any percent problem you will see on SSAT. Now that we understand what percent really means, let's see how it works in real life. In the next lesson, we will apply percent to things you see every day, like discounts, price changes, and growth rate. For example, our shirt cost $50 and is 60% off. How do we figure out the sales price? We will walk through it step by step using the same logic you've already learned, just in real-world situations. Great work today! You now understand what percent really means and how to move between fractions, decimals, and percentages. In the next lesson, we will take everything you learned and apply it to real-life percent problems step by step. I'm Kai from ClearKai, where learning is made clear, one step at a time.